my notes. I don't know if there's any good way to hold my notes, but I'm just going to do the best I can. Right. Well, no, that you'll be fine. 3 by 5. See you. Okay. I like that. Why don't we get over here? Yeah, 3 by 5. That's actually a good idea. Right. Sure. You're not feeling it, but it's a little easier to handle. Well, the only reason the question is nice to remember. The question is, hi, Ellen, how you doing? It's easy to forget things, but the thing that always terrifies me is that a word is just going to get lost. Like the name of Tom's rabbit is Leroy, and that's a detail I want to get right. So I don't want to forget. Let's see, was it Leona? Oh boy, you got it for that because your life is at stake. Gracious. No. You only get one chance. I agree, Alan. It's beautiful. It's really a wonderful piece. I had no idea what to expect, and I hope it retains a great life. I'll tell you what, I do feel confident. I hope that was so lyrical. We wanted to conduct.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the world premiere of Alan Petker's Dona, Nobis, Pacem, or Grant Us Peace. We are thrilled that you're all here. We even have an overflow crowd in another room watching us on TV, which I don't think would be quite the same. We wish they were here with us. And maybe we can make room for them if everybody scoots to the middle. Pretend you like the people next to you and scoot to the middle, and then we'll add some people on the ends, okay?
Yeah, we really didn't want to applaud. Like Penny, you saw Penny worked hard. She's really smart.
It's nice to hear that you've made new friends. My name is David Irvine. I'm the director of choral music here at First Presbyterian Church, and we are delighted that you're all here for this very special occasion. This afternoon, I think you're going to hear some exceptional music. But before you hear the world premiere of Dona Nobis Pacem, we are going to hear from the composer himself. But before we hear from the composer himself, you're going to hear from me. And I'm going to tell you a little background from my perspective, for what it's worth. In 2008, I commissioned Alan to write a piece in music when I was at St. Andrew Presbyterian Church in Sonoma. And I called Alan and said, I have a commission for you. And he said, oh, that's great. I could use that. And I said, well, he says, what's the text? Because most composers want to know what text we're going to set. And I said, well, Alan, I don't have a text. I have Chinese paintings. Now, I think this was over the phone, so I couldn't see his face. But I'm sure it was like, okay, David, what are you doing to me? So I had discovered this Chinese Christian artist named Hu Qi, and I was just inspired by his artwork. And I said, let's do a piece for choir and orchestra, multimedia, so that the Chinese art is going above you, and you get to pick any text you want. I just want these paintings. Well, the result was outstanding. I mean, he was inspired, as challenging as it was. But I must say that since 2008, Alan has never missed the opportunity to give me a hard time about commissioning music to Chinese art. The most challenging commission he'd ever had. So this time I decided it was time to turn the tables. And when I called him in 2020, there was this pandemic in between calling and tonight. When I called him, no conditions at all. I said, what is the one piece of music that you've always wanted to write that no one's ever commissioned? Totally open. Better than Chinese art, right? Anything you want to do. And he said, I've always wanted to do a Dona Nobis Pacem. Grant us peace. It so happened at the time that our session of the church, which is the governing body, had decided to make a BHAG. You know what a BHAG is? A big, hairy, audacious goal. To heighten the awareness of our congregation on issues of anti-racism and social justice. And here's Alan saying, I want to do a piece on social justice. As I said in my Facebook post, coincidence? No, the God thing. So we're going to, during the offering that we're going to take a little later on, we're going to do just the last couple pages from that Chinese piece that we did in 2008. You won't see the artwork, but you'll hear the music. So that's what you're going to hear during the offering. But before we do that, we're going to hear from Alan. And I want to introduce two very special people to you. The first is Tim Stafford. And Tim is a member here at First Presbyterian and a nationally known journalist. Served as a senior writer with the national publication Christianity Today. He's written 30-plus books on the subject of biblical commentary, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, marriage and sex, and 2 books on Giants pitcher Dave Dravecky. To say he's eclectic is putting it mildly. In addition, he also edited the NIV Student Bible with Philip Yancey. And the other person I want to introduce is a guy named Alan Petker. Now, you can read all about Alan in your program, so I'm not going to bore you with all that. I'll just tell you that we met in the early 1980s. I won't tell you where, because that's even a longer story. But early in the 1980s, we were both kind of in the infancies of our career. And we've been close friends ever since. We have worked together with various groups, and we have sung together and conducted together in Europe, Russia, and Argentina together. Wow. So we're well-traveled partners. So more importantly, I just want to tell you that Alan is a very dear, dear friend, and I can't thank him enough. All yours.
He's Alan Petker, and I'm Tim Stafford, just so you get that clear. But before I start grilling Alan, I want to just have a few minutes to tell you about Tom Oliari, who really, this event is in memory of him. And because of him, it really wouldn't have happened without him. Tom was a member of this church for probably 35 years at least. He was an extremely faithful member of our choir, and a very, he's kind of a whimsical Sonoma County character. Had a great sense of humor. He was gentle. He loved music as much as anybody you can imagine. And unfortunately, about 30 years ago, he contracted MS. And we watched over the years his slow deterioration physically. It was sometimes painful to watch. At first, he lost the ability to play guitar. I should have started by saying he was a musician, not only in the church choir, but he was a rock and roll musician for years in Sonoma County. He had 2 bands, I'm told, that he fronted. One was called Flyer, and the other was called Smokin'. And I'm just curious if anybody remembers hearing them, because I'm told they played all over the county. Anybody? Huh? I don't see any hands. So I guess that's history, right? But Tom loved to play. He was a professional musician, and I met him when he was, like a lot of musicians, he had multiple streams of income, and not by choice necessarily, right? But he was a magician, and he came to my daughter's 3rd grade birthday party to put on a magic show with his pet rabbit Leroy, and that was Tom. He was just a delightful guy. He reached the point where he couldn't drive anymore, and he couldn't play the guitar, which was really sad and frustrating for him. He couldn't drive anymore. Dave McCall, who happens to be sitting right here, actually drove him back and forth to choir practice and church for a number of years. Actually, Tom made a deal with him when he couldn't drive anymore. He gave him his car, and on the condition that Dave would drive him to and from church. It was a good deal for everybody, I think. So when Tom died about 5 years ago, to our complete surprise, he left his house to the church in his will. And I have to explain that Tom was not a rich guy. In fact, I think he was very poor. I think he lived on disability. But somewhere back in the past, he had bought this little house, not too far from here. Very small house. Probably didn't pay much for it when he bought it. But like all the real estate in Sonoma County, it turned out to be worth quite a lot of money. And that was when David Irvine got, when we had this large pot of money, we were thinking, what can we do to honor Tom? And because he was a beloved character in this church, just a lovely, lovely, kind and gentle person who loved music. So that's why we get to have this concert, because that money went to commission Alan to do this piece, and the rest is history. So
I like hearing that story. It makes me, how large a pot was that? I don't know sure I asked.
You probably could have asked for more. So I'm going to ask Alan some questions. I'm going to see if we can, it's been, as a choir member, I've been really enjoying being rehearsed and taught this music by Alan. It's been a wonderful experience. Well, here's what I want to ask Alan to start. We all know, I imagine everybody in this audience knows somebody who's a musician, maybe lots of people who are musicians. We know maybe a few conductors, but hardly any of us, at least speaking for myself, know what a composer is. I mean, we know the concept, but we don't know any composers. How on earth did you decide that you wanted to become a composer, and then how do you become a composer?
I have to say, I don't think I planned to become a composer, although I did compose early on at home. It's always been in me. And every composer I know, and I work with a lot of other composers, I can say that that's something that they can't help. They just have to express themselves in that composition. I do know when I was a student at Cal State Northridge, undergraduate student, I was a viola major. And I remember I would always do extra composition at the theory assignments. And so eventually the composition department approached me and said, would you like to be a composition major? And I thought, I don't know how I could make a living at composition. I think I'll stay as a viola major. Yeah.
multiple streams of income.
That's very true. I do say I did keep. Obviously, I just kept writing, and I've written mainly for need was the first thing. I was a church musician for 45 years, and and I've had this chorales and that I've conducted, and so there was always opportunities, and so that's what really drives you, I think, are opportunities, and then commissions started, and of course, nothing like a deadline gets you to write.
And Alan also, if you read the write-up on him, you'll know he's also a publisher, music publisher. So you have the job of bringing other composers to the world.
And that is a real pleasure, actually. Yeah, I do.
So Dona Nobis Pacem, I mean, there's been a lot of Dona Nobis Pacems done in the history of the music world. How do you see this one as different from all the others?
Actually, there is a big difference. I think the Dona Nobis Pacem, probably the best well-known, would be the Ralph Vaughan Williams, which is a huge work, huge orchestra and choir, and it's a Christmas work. And I think that's what Dona Nobis Pacem, a lot of people would know, Dona Nobis Pacem, Pacem. And those are sung at Christmas time. This one, instead, moves into social justice. So the biggest difference is that the content of the texts are so different. And that's what drove the whole piece.
Well, that's actually leads me to my next question, which is, this piece has got such an eclectic combination of texts from everybody's, historically, Helen Keller, Abraham Lincoln, Julius Caesar, you name it. They're in here. How did you come up with those texts for this piece?
That was research. I mean, once David and I sat down and really went through, okay, what's your concept? And I came up with the names of the movements, which you can see on there, just single names for these. But then it was researching. I wanted to make sure it was eclectic, that it was multiple in genders, writing, different races, bringing in the Navajo prayer was important. I just wanted to find different ways that express, because social justice is important to everyone. Peace is certainly a common denominator. So it actually was a thrill, because you get to find these texts, some of which I was unfamiliar. I think you'll know the Abraham Lincoln, you'll know the Emily Dickinson text probably. There are some that are well known, but others, and Micah from the Bible Scriptures, that one is, of course, a well-known one. But that was it. It was just sitting down research. I submitted these to David. He went through them, and we ended up with what you see.
And you mentioned that the notes came easily for you. I mean, it was almost like the piece was writing itself. Why do you think that was so?
Okay, that is true. This is unusual. I sometimes can write all day and nothing is that I like, and maybe it'll come back. But that was not true in this case. David mentioned that the commission happened before the pandemic. It was in January of 2020 when he approached me about this. And so we already got things going, and in fact, I had written the first movement when the pandemic hit. And he said we were having to put everything on hold. And so I said, I understand, that makes great sense, but I'm going to finish it because I'm just too motivated. And now I had all the time in the world, didn't we all? And suddenly, I think that helps. I think it made a big difference. I didn't have the pressure. Urgency went away. And I had it pretty much done in about 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Maybe we paid you too much. That was a joke. This is a totally different change of subject, but when we had lunch together a month or so ago, you mentioned that you have a Ukrainian family living with you, and in this, under the subject of social justice, that seems relevant. Tell us about what this has been like and how that happened.
Well, I give my wife credit, and Kimmy's singing in the choir here, which is fun too to come up with me. But when the war broke out, right away she saw that there was a way you could sign up, and it was airbnb.org, .com. They're all set up to do housing, and so they put together a website. She signed up for it. And then, to be honest, we kind of forgot about that until October. And we got a phone call, and we can only take one person. So we're connected to her family, but we have just one person. Okay. But we got a call and said, we have a Ukrainian that is a refugee, and where she's supposed to go, they had a medical emergency. She can't, could you take her? And so we said, well, of course, we'll take her. She said, good, she'll be there tomorrow.
Wow.
And she was. And I have to say that, wow, it's, you know, anytime you think you're doing something and you're doing the special stuff, the blessing is the other way. She lives with us and is a fantastic individual. She's a lawyer by trade, still is working in law in Ukraine from our house. You know, we use Google Translate to communicate with each other, and that's how...
You mean she doesn't speak English?
A little, and better and better.
Okay.
She's studying it, and so, yeah, she's a lot better than she was in October.
But Google Translate is the way to go.
Is our friend.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's really
absolutely.
interesting.
And she's a good cook, too, by the way.
Oh, good. That's a language I understand.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a little bit about how you took these texts and translated them into music. And you've shared several examples, but tell us, like, well, start with the first movement.
I know you're asking. I shared some things with the choir about the structure behind the writing. I like symbolism in music. I think it's something that you can do. And I think composers, well, that's what you just added depth to what you're writing. And I'll say in the first movement is a lux aeterna, light eternal is what it goes to, and it's called light. And you'll hear in the very opening, you'll hear a building cluster of notes that build up to actually rather a dissonant beginning, and then that releases, and then we march into what is the first melody that you'll hear. And really what the opening is the melody that's all squished together, which creates a shadow of sound, and then the light emerges as you go into it, and the melody is exposed in a horizontal sense. It's just those same notes. So, and those are things which you may not pick up right away, or maybe ever, unless I told you. But those
they're there.
Yeah, those are the kind of symbolisms. I know I have, the second movement has a lot of counterpoint to it because it's going to be talking about individual responsibilities that we have to take care of one another, take care of those especially that need it the most. And so by breaking it up into where everybody's got different things to say, it does that, and then it pulls them together in a little homophonic conclusion that says, unless we do this together, it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that...
It's beautiful. Lots more of those we could talk about, but I just want to end by asking you, what do you hope this audience and the choir and the orchestra experience through this piece of music?
Belafonte. We just lost Belafonte. And there was a statement that he said, and basically was that art is the most powerful weapon we have. And when I heard that, because Kimmy was reading it, and it's like, oh wow, this is. I'm always frustrated as an artist, and how do I get involved in some of the things where I want to do something? I can give money, I do that, but how do I act? How do I get involved? And we did the Ukraine was part of that too. So we want to do more, but to be able to write something that expresses all this, and then we get to share it in a public platform like this. To me, I hope that it is motivational for you, and you'll get to say, we can do more. I can do more in myself or my church or my community. So to be able to express it this way, and of course, I hope that others will perform the work, and it'll continue to be an ongoing message.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Alan. We're going to now hear the music.
Yes.
drums of war? Who bangs the drums of war? Who bangs the drums? Who bangs the drums of war? 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 Beware! Beware! Beware!
But wait, there's more. Our 18-month-old granddaughter, whenever she encounters something that she takes delight in that's out of the ordinary, she says, wow. This is definitely a wow for us to be here today and to experience this. Phenomenal. First, thank you, Alan, for your creative genius and this beautiful piece. I hope it will continue to be used throughout years to come. It's a wonderful work of calling attention to what is greatly needed in our world today. Thank you. And thank you to David Irvine for the wonderful connection and suggestion to bring this about, and for your idea of making it happen, and then greasing the skids, as we say, of making sure that people approved it. So thank you for that. We appreciate the phenomenal musicians here today. The choir, thank you so much. Would you please stand one more time? Thank you. They have put in a lot of hours dating back to last year in the fall, so thank you so much. And to the orchestra, we appreciate your participation and your professional experience in making this happen. Thank you so much. I have one more short Tom O'Leary story. It was told by his girlfriend. They were walking together one day, and he saw a man who looked like he was out of resources and could use something. And the manner in which Tom went about helping him is very unique to who he was. He dropped a $5 bill and reached down and said, "Excuse me, sir, but I believe you might have dropped this." And the gentleman graciously accepted it and said, "Well, thank you." And it's that sense of dignity of caring for others who are less resourced than most of us that made us think that the partnership who we would like to benefit from this concert was Catholic Charities, because they go about caring for people in our community with great dignity and honor, and do it in a very comprehensive way. So this is a chance for us to be generous, to take the next step, and to express our gratitude for this music and this experience and benefit Catholic Charities. Margie Pettibone from Catholic Charities is here, and I'd like her to say a few words on their behalf.
Thank you so much. Every time I come in this building, I'm overwhelmed with the love and the support and the encouragement that I've gotten. I've been with Catholic Charities for 9 years as of last Sunday, and we've been partnered at least from that time. So thank you so much for all you've done for us. I was given 3 or 4 minutes to tell you about Catholic Charities today, so I've been agonizing over how to do justice to all the people that work on our behalf. And I wanted to go back to when I started. And I'd like you to just take maybe about 10 seconds right now and go back there with me and picture someone who's experiencing homelessness. Just picture them in your mind, please. So I had no idea what size crowd this would be today. So I have a very small picture, but I'd like to ask you, your image of homelessness, was it this little girl who looks to be about 4 or 5 years old? No. How about you? Is this the person you picture? No. Anybody picture a little girl about 4 or 5 years old in that picture? Well, let me share with you that we have 90 children right now at Caritas Center. And we know that every day a child is in shelter, every day a child experiences homelessness, they are more likely to be obese as adults. We know that they're likely to have emotional and social developmental issues. How many people here have a dog? Anybody have a dog? Did you ever notice when there's any kind of commotion in your house, an argument, or maybe somebody's really sick, how that dog reacts? The dog often will run to the corner, right? They have a sense of the stress. Now, if we think that our little 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds don't have that same sense of the stress that's going on in their family, just think back about that dog. They feel that, they understand it, and they take that with them. But we also know that with early intervention, we can reverse that. We know that if we share with them things like this afternoon that we've had together, music, culture, a hope of looking beyond where they are now. That's why we don't say they're homeless. We say they're experiencing homelessness because we want it to be a short time. And I know that they understand what their family's going through because at Christmas time we had the kids make cards for their friends, for their family, whoever they wanted to. And one little boy, he couldn't quite spell yet. He could write some of his letters, but not perfectly. And he drew a little rectangle with a triangle on top and a little squiggly coming out of the top, right? The little house. And he was going to give this card to his little friend who was in the shelter with him. He opened the card, it said, "I hope Santa Claus brings you a home." Now, how many 5- and 6-year-olds are asking for that from Santa Claus? But he knew it wasn't a truck. He knew it wasn't a little, wagon that he needed. He knew what he needed. He needed a home. So I would be remiss if I didn't share just a little bit more about some other areas of service with Catholic Charities. We, of course, are doing work to stabilize the families. What's more important, the work we do, the intervention with the children and their schools and making sure that they're getting their education, or getting the plan ready for families, for the parents or the grandparents to move them into housing. We have people who we got smart a couple years ago and said, maybe we shouldn't have social workers looking for housing. Maybe we should hire people familiar with low-income real estate, and we did. And right now, next week, any development that's going on here in the area, we'll have somebody out there talking to the developer, talking to landlords about landlord incentives. So I'm just scratching the surface of what we do. I also want to share with you that we know that there are several thousand people experiencing homelessness. We also know that over 20,000 are on the verge of homelessness. And our goal is to keep them into housing. It's really a crisis for an individual or a family to fall into homelessness, and it's an economic challenge to get back into housing. So we have a very robust program that is addressing that, helping people connect with resources, helping people do a budget to keep them in housing. We also, if you'll indulge me for 2 more quick stories, I'll tell you that we are also one of the largest immigration service providers in the country. People go, oh, and I say, we're one of the largest in California, and they say, wow. So whatever works for you, we're both. But I was in our lobby at Airway Court, and I saw a young fellow come in, and he had his keys out in front of him. And do you ever notice that after you're about 18 years old, you put your keys in your pocket, but when you're 16 or 17, you kind of walk around with them. So I knew he was about 16 or 17, and he went up to the receptionist, and he said, I have an appointment today, and gave her his name and who he had the appointment with. She said, okay, fine, have a seat. He said, I'm really excited about this appointment. She said, well, that's great. I'll let them know you're here. Well, he was not to be deterred. He was going to tell his story. And he said to her, my parents have been saving for this day for years. And she thought, well, you know, the applications are costly, but saving for years? And he said, you know, after my appointment today, I'm going to be able to go and visit my grandmother in Mexico, and I'll be able to get back into the country. He said, I haven't seen her since I was 2. Now remember, he's about 16 or 17 right now. Now none of you are old enough to be grandparents, but when you are, I want you to think of this story and what that might mean. And I know I'm out of time, but I made a promise a few years ago, and I have to keep to that promise. I drove up to the family support center, the family shelter, with a van full of things, and you know, I was in a hurry, as I always am, and I went in and I said, you know, can a couple people come out and help me unload the van? And 3 teenage boys came out, and a little fellow, maybe about 10 or 11, and they made trips back and forth, and then the van was empty. I said, okay, thank you so much. I think we're finished. And the 3 teenagers wandered off, and the 10 or 11-year-old, who's kind of walking kind of slowly, and he looked back over his shoulder, and I thought, you know, he wants to say something to me. So I stayed there and waited, and sure enough, he came back, and he came too close. You know, he came really close because what he had to tell me was so urgent. And he came right up, and he got ready to say to me, he said, you tell anybody who does anything for us that I say thank you. So for him, thank you for all you do.
If you're writing a check for your offering, make it out to First Presbyterian Church, and in the memo line, add Catholic Charities. 100% of what's being given in this offering goes to Catholic Charities. Thank you. Did you want to say?
Just real quickly, as I said at the beginning, we're going to be singing just the last couple pages, which is The Lord Bless You and Keep You, from Touch that I commissioned Alan in 2008. So if you have ever sung Touch, either with me conducting or with Alan conducting, would you please come up and join us?
have some instructions for you before I say the benediction, but first I want to invite the two of you to go ahead and make your way into Ingram Hall where people can greet you afterwards. If you don't go now, you'll never get there. So in a room directly opposite this room, down the hall, is a fellowship area we call Ingram Hall, and we'd like you to join us there for some refreshments and an opportunity to interact with. And Margie, would you join them also? I want you to be able to interact with people as well. And you can, we're going to position David and Alan near the pianos so you have some sense where that is. It's all the way at the end in the corner. If you want to speak with them, you may do so, and then just have some time to interact as well. And you can tell who the musicians are because they're wearing black. So, and if someone thanks you and you're wearing black, just nod and say you're welcome. I think that's enough instructions. Let me say a benediction. Go into God's world with God's peace. Hold on to what is good. Have courage. Return no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Practice justice in the name of all that is holy. May God grant you his peace. Amen. You're welcome to go.